Welcome to episode 11 of the Silver Savage podcast. This episode is brought to you by Masada Tactical, the only place that teaches authentic Israeli-based tactics in Maryland and its surrounding areas. Come try a class for free and visit training.masadatactical.com for a list of all our classes and seminars. Use the code SilverSavage10 for 10% off when you sign up online. This episode is also brought to you by Combat Iron Apparel, the highest quality apparel for fitness-minded patriots. Visit combatironapparel.com and use the code SilverSavage10 to get 10% off your next purchase. Today on the show, we have Dr. Jason Piccolo. Steve and I actually had the honor of being on his show, The Protectors, a couple of months back, and we are happy to have him on ours. Dr. Jason Piccolo has been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He served as a U.S. Border Patrol agent near the San Diego and Mexico border, and he still serves in federal law enforcement. Piccolo held an assignment to the prestigious White House Security Council's Human Smuggling Cell. He served in the United States Army, including a tour in Iraq in 2006 to support the Combined Joint Special Operations Task Force Arabian Peninsula as their Anti-Terrorism Officer. Dr. Jason Piccolo left military service in 2006 as an Infantry Captain after serving in active and reserve components since 1993. Jeez, it's a long time in the military. He still remains active as a mentor to veterans and their spouses. He hosts a popular show, The Protectors, the podcast, the one that Steve and I were on, and brings true life stories from law enforcement, military, and emergency responders, our nation's protectors, and those that support them. He is an author, has taught college since 2017, subjects ranging from computer forensics to homeland security to immigration law. He earned his bachelor's in law enforcement, a master's in forensic science, and holds a doctorate in strategic security. Here's our chat with Dr. Jason Piccolo. A guy named Dr. Jason Piccolo is like, best conversations happen before you actually hit record, so just hit the freaking record button.
Just hit record.
Right? So now what I'm impressed about, I'm in my camper because I have 4 kids, including a 3-month-old baby, 3 dogs, my fiance, and my future mother-in-law all in the house. So I'm going to escape into my camper. So you have the most beautiful office in your background with the flags and the map. I need a studio like yours.
Listen, I'm in a rocking chair with electrical stem connected to my back. So nothing says Silver Savage more than that, with rifles and axes behind me.
That's right.
I hear you. That's exactly what I do. Is I go to the basement to get away from everybody, and before that, I would even record in a closet just to try to find some space. And like when I used to do radio all the time, I would go out to my Jeep and I would sit in there just so I could be quiet. Because the radio you can call in with your phone. But yeah, man, trying to find a quiet spot to podcast is it's like a dream when you can do it.
Well, I can't wait to ask you, actually. You've been posting a lot of videos for podcasters recently, and I love watching them as someone that's just getting into it. So we're certainly going to get to that, and I'd love to pick your brain on it. But before we go there, Steve and I were on your podcast not too long ago. Greatly appreciated that opportunity. But, how about you take a minute and tell our listeners, who's Dr. Jason Piccolo?
Who is Dr. Jason Piccolo? That's a good question. I've been trying to figure that out lately. And it's like, I really didn't figure out who I was until in my 40s. So, but before that, though, I was in the Army, U.S. Army in the 1990s. Artillery guy, got out, commissioned, went to college, and then I commissioned as an infantry officer. Then I went to the U.S. Border Patrol, did that for a while. Then I became a special agent on the Southwest border. Worked narcotics for a while, got recalled, did a tour in Iraq, Kuwait, Mississippi, all over for 18 months. And then what else? I came back. I went to work for DOD for a bit, then Homeland Security, and now I work for another agency. Got a bunch of education in there. And what else? This is almost 22 years in law enforcement now.
So you're almost done?
Almost. I am literally counting until I'm 50. So today my retirement calculator says I have 360 days left, and then I am
That's
done.
less than a year. That's exciting.
I know it is.
So I didn't realize you were in radio. When was that?
Well, I used to do a lot of interviews. I used to do a lot of media.
Okay.
So I'd be on Fox every week, or I'd be on,
Court
a
TV,
radio show. Yeah, I'm doing Court TV tonight. I've been doing Court TV for almost about a year and a half now. So every Thursday night, I usually do that. And I do like law enforcement analysis and consulting and stuff like that.
Very cool. And when did you start your podcast? Tell us about it.
Podcast, yeah, February 2019. The Protectors podcast, and had about 300 or something guests so far. And I really like the podcast space, and I'm glad you guys are jumping into it as well. Is because you could talk to different people, and that's like my thing with the podcast is I want to talk to anybody that's a protector, and that could be military, veterans, emergency responders, law enforcement, those that support them, and people who are just common. Everybody is a protector one way or the other. You're either protecting your house or family or yourself, but you're a protector. And 9 times out of 10, the people I'm talking to, I shouldn't even say that. 10 times out of 10, the people I'm talking to are the protectors of others. And then, there's not a lot of selfish people in a protector community. So anytime there's a chance, they'll jump out there and protect others. So that's why I named it the Protectors Podcast and been going pretty strong.
That's awesome. It's pretty centered around the 2A community, right? So that's a big, strong theme throughout, even though it's not just that, but that is a big component, right?
I talk about guns and stuff here and there. That's because I like guns and stuff here and there. But it's a lot of different guests. But you could say a lot of it could be 2A just because a lot of my guests are like former something or the other, former special forces, former pararescue, former agency, former this, former that. But it's more of centralized around being prepared to be the protector, talking about what you do, stuff like that. It's narrow, but it's overwhelming with how many different backgrounds people have.
Recently I listened to one of your podcasts and you had a lady on it. Name evades me right now. I apologize, but she does PR. She used to work for a news company locally.
Oh, yeah.
She started her own company. I actually ended up buying her book after listening to you and her, and hopefully I learned something from that. So there's certainly a big variety because you have people like Steve who eats crayon for a living, and people like her, and that's part of what makes it fun, right?
Yeah, I try to get something. In the beginning, I used to do the Q&A, the interrogation type. Or like, tell me where you're from. What'd you do? What'd you do this? That? And then I turned into more of a conversation. And now I turn it more into a conversation, but I want to learn something every time I have a podcast. Learn something about something new. Like we were talking about Allison, who does PR and who like really tells you how to brand yourself and how to get into media and stuff like that. Or learn something about myself that I never even thought about when I was doing an interview with people. So I'm always trying to learn something new when I podcast.
All right. Well, this is something we usually leave for the end, and I guess we're still in the interrogation phase. But since you hit on it, I would love to get your opinion. Obviously, our podcast was geared towards people mid-40s, and a little older that either were warriors, wanted to become warriors, feel like they still have some battle left in them. What is something that they can learn? What would be an advice that you would give them from what you learned from all your guests?
One thing I've learned personally is these different types of resumes, and that comes into being a warrior. Is my whole life I've got all these degrees, I've got all this training, I got all this different background experience, and that all looks good on a paper, but it wasn't self-fulfilling. It wasn't that's my professional resume. Now I'm into this personal resume. And that's the thing what I'm doing right now is where I'm like, what am I doing that's for me to make me better, to not just enjoy myself and to be fit, but if there comes a stance where I actually have to be a protector again. I mean, I'm in law enforcement, but I'm more of a manager headquarters type now. But so to me, that is one thing I've learned is take care of yourself, be prepared, and train. I'm at the gym every day now almost. My workouts have changed so much since I was a kid. I used to be one of those guys who would be like, okay, one day I'm doing chest and buys, and next day is going to be tries and back. And now I do full body workout 5 to 6 days a week, and my strength has gone. I'm benching more than I'm doing, like almost 290 now, and I haven't done that since I've never done 290. I've never pushed myself to get to be strong. And the other thing too is learn weapon systems. I love guns. I've been carrying a gun for almost 30 years now, in one way or the other. But I want to learn more. I want to learn more about things that are fun to me, not just the simple AR platforms and Glocks and SIGs. That's why you're seeing me a lot. I'll be posting about like lever actions or shotguns or something that's outside of the norm. And we're not talking like your normal everyday Remington 870 pump. I'll jump on there with auto loaders and stuff like that. But I'm trying to learn something new. And that's one thing I've learned about guests is like I've interviewed so many different people who are like authors. Let's take authors, for example, who didn't start writing until they were in their 40s. So they didn't start a new something until their 40s, probably because a lot of us don't really mature until 30 or 40 sometimes, you know.
All of us still don't.
I'm still waiting to hit puberty.
I hear you, brother. I'm still trying to mature myself, and I'm almost 50 now.
So you had you had a bunch of authors recently, and some of them are fiction. Some of them wrote some historical books. I love the conversation you had about the names evade me right now, so I apologize. But it was an historical during the Civil War, and everything that was going behind the scenes there.
Oh, Brian Kilmeade, probably.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I suck with names.
That's okay. Yeah, he writes in. I love history, and history repeats. Yeah. If anything, read history. Even if it's like, you know, you can read fictional history as long as it's like based on fact so you can get something out of it. I wouldn't recommend it. I like the real bona fide history. I want to know what's going on. And because it does repeat. You know, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, you know, when I really kind of matured into knowing what I'm looking at on TV and reading. And, you know, you look at the Vietnam War compared to our last 20 years in Afghanistan, and you're like, the same mistakes we made here and there, we've been making over and over and over again. And you wonder if we made these same mistakes before, but we just don't have a written documentation of it.
Right. No, I'm a big believer in history repeats itself, and those who don't learn from it are doomed to repeat it, right? So you're going to be at SHOT Show next week, right?
I am.
I'm going to see you there.
Yes.
I'm going to go. I'm actually teaching in the Midwest prior to Sunday and Monday, and I hear there's a storm coming, so I hope that doesn't mess up flights. But yeah, I'll be there. So that'll be fun. Do you think between some of the major names pulling out and, you know, the whole Omicron COVID thing going on and stuff like that, you feel that it's going to be a different show than in the past?
Well, the reality of SHOT Show is this. It's business to business. The bro vets, the influencers, and everybody else that are complaining about this and that, it's really not about them. You know, me, I'm going there as media because I want to go and make some connections and build up some more network for later on, whether that be in a sponsor realm or whether or not be for more interviews later on. But the reality is a lot of these smaller vendors need to get their products out there. They need people to come in, take a look at them from outside the industry. SIG, when they do the big stuff, SIG, I think who else just pulled out? Was it another biggie pulled out?
Did Beretta just pulled out?
Yeah, Beretta. So, you know, their products already have a really good fan base. They already have a really good pro selling point, whether that's the military or law enforcement and the general public. They're really not going to take a hit by not going to SHOT. Now, there are like 2,700 vendors or something else. They could be like small. That could be like Masada Tactical has like a booth there, and you have your wares you're trying to get out there. There could be other things like that. So to me, it's like, it's going to be a lot different. Will SHOT Show be the same in the future? I don't think so. I think a lot more smaller venues are going to start popping up here and there. And that's one thing, like, you know, Guntree had, that's where I met you guys. It was through the Guntree one and stuff like that. And I'm looking more forward to those. And I'm going to do the Protectors on the road, and I'll bring some mics with me and do some podcasts on the road at these smaller events because I want to talk to people. I don't like buying and selling things. I'd rather just go and talk about it. I'll sell for you. I'll market for you. But I'm not going to literally sell my own products and stuff like that. But
and I think you're right. I'll be honest. I've been going for about 6-7 years now, and it's always been overwhelming. It's almost to get lost because it's so massive. And I do appreciate the smaller shows that you go in and you actually get to interact with people and you live with some content that's worthwhile, right? So I certainly agree with you. Funnily enough, this is obviously we're gonna drop it after SHOT Show, so it'll be interesting to see if we predicted correctly or not.
We should do a follow-up, like a 5-minute follow-up afterwards.
Right. Well, I catch you there. You have your microphone, so
I'm
capitalize on
not
that.
bringing a microphone with me, and that's the thing. So when I went to SHOT a couple years ago, it was 2020, so it was kind of pandemic was just about to kick off, and I brought all my gear with me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set up gear. I'm going to do this. I got my laptops, and I'm like, you just don't have time. I mean, if I'm going to go there and I'm going to do podcasts, and I'm not going to go around a floor, it might have worked out. But I'm like, hey, you know what? My show has always been remote. It's always been like this, using StreamYard or Zoom. So I'm going to go there and I'm just going to talk to people and try to find who's going to be a good guest. And one thing about me is like, I do have a very diverse guest list, but I never chase the followers. I don't care if somebody has 5 followers or 5 million followers. If they're going to be a good guest, they're going to be a good guest. I'm not going to be chasing after you.
And you know what's nice about that, Jason, because you kind of mentioned going to these smaller shows. You're bringing light to these smaller vendors and these veteranpreneurs, which is a term I learned actually when we were that last show. A lot of people who are not in this industry kind of get blinded by the big names and they forget about everyone else. And there's plenty of room for everyone, but unfortunately, these younger veteranpreneurs that are coming into the industry now get kind of overshadowed by the big names. And then people like yourselves, BK, myself, that are going out there and seeking those people are bringing them to light, which is an admirable thing in itself, which is pretty cool, because you're not, there's, we hear about certain veteran coffee brands and always one stands out. But, I know BK just reached out to another one, Long Range Coffee Company. They have phenomenal coffee. And I wouldn't have known about them until BK established a relationship with them and brought them to light. So I think it's like a worthy cause almost, there's plenty of people out there. There's plenty of room on this battlefield. And I think taking this approach is looking out for your battle buddy, So
I love talking to small business people, and I love talking to small, I'm not tooting my own horn, but in a way I am. I'm like, look, every publishing house out there now will send me their thriller author. So like I had Brad Taylor on the other day, but then I'll have a guy who's self-published, or I have a girl who's self-published. And the same thing with coffee companies. I'll talk to anybody. I'm getting a watch from this company called Declan James Watch Company. He's a former Navy SEAL, and he does these Swiss operating watches that are incredible. And I want companies like that. I want to buy small. I just, speaking of the authors, I just linked up with a veteran-owned bookstore out here in Virginia. So now every time someone has a book for sale, I'm going to say, buy it online from this company. Buy it online from her. Go there, pick it up in person. We'll get some signed copies sent out to her. And support like you said, these small business owners. There's plenty to go around. 300, how many people we have in this country? 320 million. If you're looking at, and how many of them are really on social media? I'm lucky I got maybe almost $5,000 on my social media. When I go online and I'm doing court TV, who knows how many millions are watching me and here and there. So I use my platform to say, hey, you know what? Go look at this company. The major, the elephant in the room with the coffee company that's out there that's trying to buy up every influencer in the world, which they're doing a pretty good job of it. But the reality is there are so many good coffee companies out there that are original. And me, I'm like a 4 cup a day. How many of us are 3-4 cups a day?
That's just to start the day.
Okay, that's to start the day. The Red Bull in the afternoon.
Cups, enemas. I mean, however I can get it, it's going in.
So Jason, you talk about using the platform to. I'm using the term influence. I don't know if that's the right term or not. I'm a foreigner, so I'm allowed to. But you're using the platform to enlighten people to some other options that are out there. And our podcast was designed initially to share information. We had doctors that we interviewed, martial artists, tacticians, right? Because again, we're trying to give warriors the tools that they need. So how can I, as new into podcasting, I believe you're the 8th or 9th person we're interviewing. We're going to start dropping them next Monday. So we're new in the game. What can I do to really give value to people?
One thing is, and I'm really guilty of this myself, is what are people getting when they listen to your podcast? Okay, I'll have a Brad Taylor on, or I'll have Jack Carr or someone on there. But in my intro or in the show notes, you got to put what they're going to get out of that show. Why should they listen to that episode? Do sound bites. Do a minute sound bite. Do 2-minute sound bites. Put out clips. Pull some of this, pull a clip, send it out. People need to get value out of a podcast. The other thing is drop them. Don't wait. Drop them. If you've already interviewed 5 or 6 people, drop 1 or 2 a week, because you're going to find it. Yeah, and don't worry about editing. Don't go crazy. You hit record, go through it. Don't worry about ums and ahs. My first 20, 30 episodes, I was hiring a guy off of Fiverr and paying $50 an episode to get rid of the ums and ahs, not knowing that, hey, you know what? A podcast is a conversation. Today, I'm listening to Joe Rogan talk to Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone is like, I got to go take a piss. Like right in the middle of the podcast. He takes a piss and he comes back. But there's no editing. Right. This is a podcast. You could talk for 20 minutes, and we're going to talk for about 30 minutes tonight because I got to go pick my son up. That's a reality. This is life. This is a podcast. It's a conversation. It could be 30 minutes. It could be an hour. It could be 45 minutes. But get the content you want to get out of there. Don't worry about the time. The other thing is make sure that your audience knows what you're about. What are you trying to sell them? And we're not talking product. You're going to sell them. You listen to this show, you're going to get this out of it. You're going to get an interview with a different person talking about a different thing. And that's the other thing when we talk about the influencers and the same guests over and over again. There's a lot of really popular podcasts out there, and they have the same guests over and over. They all just rotate around the same 3 or 4 major shows. That's, you know what? And Rogan is the podfather. And listen to Adam Curry. He's really the original podfather. But the thing is, they have diverse guest lists. And you could tell they're Joe's sitting on a gold mine there. He talks some COVID here and there, but bring on other people. You know, and that's the same thing with this. Bring on other people. Talk to whoever you want. You know, it's a Silver Savage podcast. You could talk to anybody who's got silver hair or shit. If I didn't dye my beard all the time, I'd be completely white.
My future mother-in-law was in the kitchen before I came out here, and she goes, I like your t-shirt. I need one. I'm a Silver Savage. I'm like, you sure are.
Yeah.
So we need a woman's t-shirt apparently now. No, but Jason, I agree with you 100%. I also listen to some of the popular podcasts, and I get frustrated. I actually stopped listening to some of them recently because it is the same guest, and they go to each other's shows. So you have 3 or 4 people, they interview each other on different shows, but you're getting the same content over and over again. So at some point it becomes, okay, you know, it's entertaining, but that's about it. I'd rather use my time, you know, listening to your guests or to somebody that I can get some value out of. And for us, it was more about let's try and build a community around these people like us, right? So and people like us doesn't have to be military or law enforcement, right? Yeah. Anybody fights a battle, right? Steve says it best. I mean, it can be the nurse, it can be the CEO of a company, it can be the father that's going for a divorce and fighting for his kids, you know, whatever it is. That we all warriors and need that support system, and that's really what we try to give people.
Warrior goes beyond party lines too. There are, you know, and that's the thing about social media. And I always remember whenever I sit back and go, oh, this person voted for that person or this, whatever. It doesn't really matter unless they are the really, really extreme right or really, really extreme left. There's a lot of us that are just kind of right in the middle. They're like, hey, you know what? I want my guns. I want to shoot them. Don't fuck with my freedom. And you're finding so many, and you guys know you're training. How many people are showing up now to training who you could tell voted for someone on the left? Oh, and they are
last night I had a class. Yeah, 10 people out of those 9. I know for a fact because it came up during the class, and I try not to talk politics in a class, which is hard when you're teaching a basic pistol class. But out of the 10, 9 of them voted for a party that flat out goes against the gun rights. So you can see that. I don't want to say disconnect, but you can see the bridge actually. You see that bridge being built when people are starting to cross those lines a lot more freely. And I think that's where the future of the United States, that's where this country is going to be.
Listen, as soon as COVID hit, the first thing I did was Listen, I've been in law enforcement forever. I could shoot really fucking good. But the thing is, I know how to teach people things like, hey, I teach college, but I don't know how to teach people fundamental firearms. First thing I do is, in order to get to CCW here, to train CCW here in Virginia, you have to go and get your NRA certificate. So I go to the NRA basic class, and then I go to the NRA instructor course. But in that basic class, I had people that were 80 or 90 years old getting their first gun.
Yep.
And kids, 20, 30, I call them kids, but 20, 30-year-old, pink hair, doesn't matter. You could tell 9 out of 10 people in that class, like you said, were from the other side of the aisle. It doesn't matter. People want to protect themselves, and protect, what is that root word for? Protector. So it all comes down to, hey, people want to be a protector. They need to protect their house. And that's the other thing too, is this kingdom we have, whether it's in your RV out in the lot, or we're both in our basements here. It looks like a nice RV. But like, I'm in my basement, but this is my domicile. This is my family lives here. And this is what I'm going to protect. Then I'll protect my neighbor after I protect my family, but family first.
Yeah. And it's like BK said, the idea of the warrior. I think there's that misconception that a warrior is a fighter, etc. Like the quote goes, there's a fine line that differentiates a warrior and a fighter. One is driven by reason. One is driven by purpose. A fighter lives to fight. A warrior fights to live. And that includes protecting their family, their domains, etc. And like you said before, anyone can be a warrior. It doesn't matter who you are. It's when you take that, calling to protect what you have, and not just your family, but this country, its values, whatever it may be, and stand together regardless of party lines. Because when it comes down to it, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the basic necessities are going to kick in, and we're going to band together one way or another for what's right and what's wrong when it comes
Absolutely. Down. And that's exactly what it's going to be, and it's weird. Like, I feel like this year I need to be like, as soon as the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, I need to stock up on some things here and there. And this year I'm like, you know what? I really need to train. I need to train more in the fundamentals. Because, I know my carbines, I know my pistols, I know my shotguns, but I need to employ them more than once a quarter. Because like in law enforcement, in the Fed, every quarter we have to shoot, but it's not enough. You know what I do now with my kids? My kids are 11 and 13. I keep a tourniquet over my visor in my Jeep. So they think I'm nuts. But now they're like, oh, that makes sense. I'm like, okay, so let's say my son's left-handed. I go to him, okay, Johnny, you got shot in your right forearm. Put the tourniquet on and show me where you're going to put it and blah, blah, blah. And I make him go through it. Even my daughter, 11. Okay, honey, your leg got injured. How are you going to do this? Or just being injured. I cut myself really good once and putting together this studio, and I cut myself by 2 inches into my hand, and I'm spurting blood everywhere. And I go over to the kids after I wrapped it up, and they're like, why are you so calm? I'm like, hey, you know what? You got all this medical stuff around here. You got to learn how to use it. So learn. It's not just employing like combat techniques. It's like the basic fundamentals of first aid. You got to learn that stuff too.
Yep.
Yeah, we're still waiting for you to come up and train with us at Masada.
Oh, I'm waiting for the free coupon, bro.
So I don't know that we're influencers enough to be worthy, but and I was just about to say, just kind of segue. And again, by the time this is gonna air, it's gonna be past it. But I'm gonna send you information for a new seminar we're putting out for the first time. It's called what's it called?
No One's Coming.
No One's Coming. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is essentially going to cover medical, SEER, how to disassemble a car, and what can you use out of a vehicle for survival if you need to. So
that's pretty cool, man. You see, that's the stuff I like, man. Zombies are coming.
That's right.
Nobody's coming to the damn zombies.
All right. Well, Jason, I know you got to leave soon. So one thing that we've been doing, and we have a lot of fun with it. So, and I hope our guests too. I'm not sure, but Steve likes finishing each one of these little
hot seat. The Silver Savage hot seat. We're all older men, so I need to see where your mind is at. See if it's deteriorated. So put you in the hot seat with a little trivia.
So shit.
Yeah, you got 3 questions coming at you, and typically we gear them towards your own background. All right, you're a history guy. I'm a history major myself. You were in the Army, so we're going to keep it focused to that. And there might be a screwball in there too. And before I start the questions, I do want to say you were the first podcast I was ever on, so you should be proud because you popped my cherry. All right, you were my you were my first. All right, your first question. All right, Mr. Army Man. All right, why was the Army formed?
To crush the enemy, see them driven before them, and hear the lamentation of the women.
Okay, so that's Conan the Barbarian. I dig it, and I accept that answer. And the correct way to say that is, Conan, what is the meaning of life?
Crush my enemy,
have them driven before you,
me.
and the harem lamentation of the women.
Exactly.
But we accept that answer. It was actually for the Revolutionary War, but I think Conan the Barbarian is a better answer. So ding, ding, ding. You get that point. Question number 2. What famous eyewear was created out of a need for Army aviators?
Sunglasses.
Which ones?
Think brands.
Ray-Bans.
Ray-Bans. Ding, ding,
Come
ding.
on.
Yep, by Lieutenant General McCready, who wanted glasses to block out the sun and reduce nausea and sickness in aviators.
Is it
And your
nausea
last
or nausea?
question. Huh?
Is it nausea or nausea?
Tomato, tomato. You're from Israel. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. I speak Spanish. I went to public high school. You know, I got my PhD, my public high school diploma.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question. All right. And it has multiple answers. You can't Google it. What animals, when hibernating, breathe through their anus to survive?
Wolverines.
I accept it.
You see, if one thing I've learned is if you say something with conviction and really quick, boom.
You know what? Done. I'm going to Wikipedia and I'm going to update it. Change the answers to Wolverines. It's not turtles. It's not frogs.
Yeah.
It's Wolverines. Done. I take all your answers. They're all correct.
All right, Jason, I know you gotta go. Thank you so much for first of all for introducing us to podcasting, for being someone that we keep learning from, and for coming and being on our podcast. And I'm looking forward to having you in the future once we get a little better at this.
And come to classes.
I'm always available, so whenever you guys need me.
Awesome, and I'll see you in Vegas.
Sounds good, brother.
So jealous.
Take care, brother.
You know, the only thing I wish that StreamYard had was a pause button. I hate it. You know, Zoom, you could pause and blah, blah, blah. But okay, gentlemen, I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, doctor. Have a good one.
Bye.